Why don't you do it? I'll do it. Well, you do it. It's raining. All right, I'll do it. Well, hello, you boob. Yeah, I'm Larry. I'm Q's brother. And Q said he was going to record a video for his new YouTube channel. And it's raining. So he decided that he was going to not film. And I said I'd do it. So I'm Larry. It's so nice to see you. I'm Larry's brother. We work together in science, and I'm more on the experimental side. So I wanted to be a part of this you boob channel as well too, and thought I'd introduce myself even though it's raining. And hey man, you always talk about wanting electrons and doing all the science stuff. So I don't know why, just because it's raining, you're afraid to go outside. So the whole map of the second episode was going to be around risk management. You know, if we're doing a channel, if he's doing a channel, I guess I'm kind of just jumping into this whole thing. But if you're going to do a channel on wellness, then I guess we need to talk about what wellness is. Oof, it's kind of it's kind of wet out here, Q. But you know, what is wellness? What is physiology? I mean, what does it mean to be well as opposed to not being well? You know, you can be well in your head, or you can be well in your body, or you can be well in your soul, but it's really all those things, mind, body, and soul, is the way I look at it. And, you know, when we work in science, especially with human science or biological systems, we're really trying to understand the health of the system. Is it bad? Is it good? What level is it on? Is it on, the good side or the medium side or maybe the bad side? But we have to stop and ask ourselves the question of, how am I feeling? If I'm not feeling well, then, you know, maybe you should do something about it. But the question always is, what do I do? Right, Q? Am I doing okay? He says I can keep on going. So I'm going to go for a bit and maybe this will work. So, yeah, I'm Larry. I work more on the experimental side of the numbers and the data and like actually looking at, are things getting better or are things getting worse? Because if they're not getting better or they're staying the same and you're not feeling well, then do you really want to stay the same or get worse? Probably not. I don't. I try to get better. I try to learn more. So if you're not doing well, say if you're getting wet, maybe you should get an umbrella. No, no, I don't need an umbrella. I'm okay. I'm picking up electrons, as you always say, Q. So that's why he called himself Q. I eat electrons. He was running that by me, and I thought, that's pretty good, actually. So, you know, I don't know if I feel better filming this in the rain, but he asked me if I would, and I said, all right, well, at least there'll be a memory, whether it works out or not. But, you know, probably do good things for my hair anyway. Um, So if we're not doing well, then we got to ask ourselves, can we get better? And that's usually why we go to a doctor, or we go to a mechanic, or we go and talk to somebody that maybe understands why we're not doing well, right? So that's kind of the point of this YouTube channel, is to figure out how we can get weller or better or improve or live longer or lose some weight, or whatever we want to change. That's science. Science is about looking at where things are at, and then if they're not where we want to be, or if we think we could be better, then we introduce new things that maybe make things improve. If the soil's really dry, maybe we do a rain dance, and we get the rain to fall down, and then we feel better. Oh, yeah, that actually feels pretty good. Water's not going to melt you. I'm not made out of sugar. Not on no sugar diet or something like that, and I'm going to melt. Uh-oh. I think it might be hailing now. I don't think the crow's going to come today, Q. But anyways, so if we're like analyzing things and we're trying to see where things are at, then, you know, then we have to stop and think and kind of do some analysis and ask ourselves some questions. Am I as good as I can be? I don't know. I think I can always get better. I can always learn more. I can make some changes and then revisit things to see if they're getting better. But, that's what we do. We try to look at what's wrong. Is there a problem? Is there something that's making me unwell? Like I'm fat, or I can't sleep, or, you know, the soil's dry, or the fish are all gone, or, you know, all these different things. Doctor tells me I got the diabetes, or a fatty liver, or maybe my heart or my brain's not so good, or my feet hurt, or, you know, maybe my hormones seem all messed up and I'm always angry or stressed out, or, it could be anything where I'm feeling just not well or not as good as I could be. So, that's kind of how we look at things. So, if you got a problem, or if you think you might have a problem, then you probably have to sit down, maybe write down the things that are, you know, treating you unwell. It's not jiving with it's not mixing with your energy very good, and maybe your energy's off, or, you're depressed, or you're not happy where you're at. That's unwell. So all these things. And so if you write it down and put the date on it so you can come back to it and remember when you wrote these things down, but why don't you write down the 5 things that maybe aren't so well? Mm, once you write those things down and you reflect on it, you're going to connect with your energy. When you write something down, it becomes real. And then you can take some time to kind of better understand where you're at, you know? And then when you understand where you're at, then, maybe you want to write down where you want to go, write down some goals, like weigh yourself, maybe take a picture of yourself looking in the mirror in your skimpy dimpies, and, you know, set a baseline of where you're not well. Ugh, I gotta get a haircut, Q. So when things are, not, oh man, yeah, I'm looking pretty well. Yeah, man, you gotta use your senses. You gotta sense things. You gotta sense, like, maybe things just aren't so good for you. And if it's a problem, then write it down, and then write how you might be able to change it. Maybe you gotta learn something. That's probably part of this YouTube channel, is how do you learn what to do if you're not well? How do you move from unwell to better, and then track it. And then, it's like goal setting. You got to write down the problem, and then you write down what your end result, the better might be, and then, you put a time on it. It's like, I want to lose 25 pounds. It's like, well, why do you do that? Because I don't feel so well when I'm 25 pounds overweight, I'm now in my 30s, I'm in my 40s, I'm in my 50s, and I got small muscles and I got a big beer belly, It's like, well, maybe those are problems. Maybe for you, you know yourself the best, so you're going to be the only one that knows your science. If you're not good, if you're not feeling so good, if you're too wet, you're too dry, you're too big, you're too all the stuff, So what I would suggest is that, you know, you set some goals and you start to learn about what your goals or your thing you're going to aim at looks like. So you write down the times I want to set that I want to do something in this amount of time, and then you revisit it. You got to come back to your goals. And those goals, you're also going to have to think to yourself, I'm going to have to do a risk benefit analysis. And that sounds like a big term and all, but risk benefit analysis, because we don't want to change into something that's worse than we are currently are, right? That's a risk. The risk of death is a bad risk, right? The risk of getting ill is kind of not, that's not well, right? So, you know, Q gave me a chance to talk here about risk benefit analysis and goals and, you know, unwellness and how do we get weller, That's a new word I made up, weller. It's just, yeah, you got to be weller because you're probably not as good as you can be if you think you got a problem. And if you got no problems, then you're not going to change, right? Because you don't want to take on risk of change if, there's no benefit. So when you write things down, that helps you write down and lead you into some risks. Spending a bunch of money on a bunch of stuff that you don't need or that might make you worse, that's like, if you turn vegan, maybe that might work out a little bit better than a standard American diet, but you're probably going to have some B12 problems and some B problems, B vitamin problems, and you're probably not going to make all the fat soluble vitamins that you need from saturated fats. I mean, that's just a risk. So, but if you listen to some of these people on YouTube and or on the interweb and all that stuff, and they're giving you advice that's not really founded in science, then that's a risk, right? So you gotta look at your risks, but then the benefits are tied to your goals, right? Like, we want some benefits, whether it's financial or maybe you want to get healthier or you want to lose some weight or you want to sleep better or you're trying to understand what your problem is. So you're looking at the benefits of solving that problem, then leads you to a better state of being and helps you become more of who you should probably be, right? Like, none of us want to have a bad life and be sick and depressed and, have regrets in our life and all this stuff. It's kind of how me and my brother are a little bit different. He's a bit more like the stuffy toughy kind of, he's good at speaking and all that stuff. I'm more like, yeah, I want to like get on the equipment and move some stuff around and, get some stuff done, get her done, That's kind of the way we operate in our neck of the woods. And we're just a little bit different, but I can appreciate he's pretty smart. He likes to put all the pieces together and spend some time on the computer, usually outside because he doesn't like, the inside artificial light profile. So I said, you know what? It's raining today, but are we going to blow this opportunity to, you know, capture some ideas and some thoughts for the channel, you know, you can't just run away when you're setting some goals. You hold yourself accountable. Look yourself in the mirror. Ask yourself, who do I want to become and who can I become better? Because I think we're all here for a very special reason. You were born, you were chosen. Now you got a chance. Get your life back on track and connect with your higher spirit, man. You got to find what you got to be doing in your life that makes you happy. You got to find your purpose. Your purpose is to be well and be well and do well and keep on getting better and learn more. You got to open yourself up, because if you don't, you're going to have regrets. You're going to be sick. You're going to watch television all the time and end up like bad environments that make you not feel very good. We all know. Get out into nature. Get some sun on you. Get your feet on a beach. And we know that nature makes us feel better, right? But we don't always ask the question, well, why? And how does it make us feel better? But it usually does. We usually sleep better when we're outside doing something and absorbing all that. He goes on about all that light and all that magnetism and water and electrons and all that physics stuff. I'm just more of the practical get her done type guy. But you gotta stop and you gotta ask yourself some questions and you gotta be honest with yourself. Because if you're not honest with yourself, then you're just trying to fool yourself, and you can never fool yourself. Because you always know. The spirit, Mother Nature always knows. It can sense your nature. Your natural nature knows what you're capable of. But we get all distracted on YouTube and Face Truck and all those different things. I don't go anywhere near that stuff. It just makes me feel toxic and depressed, and people fighting about stuff that they hardly know anything about, and getting on with it and stressing out and this and that and politics and comparisons and all that stuff. No, that's not the way. You got to go inside. Your happiness and your wellness is not outside. So you just remember that. I think I'll leave that there because, you know, my goal was to come out in the rain. I barely even got wet. See? He's laughing at me right now. I told you it wasn't that bad. My butt's a bit wet. Oh, I think my underwear is a bit gonna need a change, but anyways, I want to say thank you for tuning in and subscribing, and kind of what the plan is if you're just watching this for the first time, you go back to episode 1, the introduction, and you watch each one of the episodes in kind of a row and keep it sequential, because it's going to take you on a journey. It's like a Netflix episode series thing that people watch, where it's like you start like Game of Thrones or whatever, all those things that people plank themselves in front of the television for hours and hours and hours, eating popcorn and chocolate bars and on the couch, and then they don't feel that well, but they're certainly entertained, right? Dopamine levels through the roof, and they're not sleeping very good and all that stuff. But I mean, it's the Game of Thrones. It's pretty entertaining, there's no doubt about it. But is that making you well? Is that keeping you from learning stuff? Digging in and connecting with who you really could be? I don't know. It's only up to you. You're the only one that knows you. You know how you're living, spending time with your kids. Hey, those kids, they're watching you. They're behaving like you. So don't ever forget those kids. Their future. Your energy's in them for the future. So you take care of them, you teach them, you spend the time with them, you give them the attention that they need. Televisions, microwave oven dinners, and working all the time. When you're 90 years old, you're going to look back and say, I lived my life well? So if you can give a subscribe and a like and share this around, maybe compliment me on my hair, that'd be great too, because, you know, I was working on truck earlier today, and then I just said, "Why aren't you making your video?" And he said, "Well, he was afraid he was going to get struck by lightning." I'm like, "Well, isn't that ironic? Q getting struck by lightning. That could happen, but I'm out here. I wasn't afraid. Look at this. I wasn't afraid." Kind of hoping the crow would have shown up, but see, it's even stopped, man. All right. Well, I'm going to let this go from here. So thanks for watching episode 2. I don't know if this is going to make the cutting room floor, but we'll give her a try anyway. And thanks so much for tuning in to QIEE Electrons. And I'm Larry, broadcasting live in place of Q for once. So, anyways, I hope you enjoy it. Take care.